The wagon wheel shattered beneath her just as the fever reached its peak. And Sarah Donnelly knew she was going to die alone in this God-forsaken stretch of California wilderness. She had been trying to fix the broken wheel for 3 days now, her husband's body still wrapped in canvas beneath the cottonwood tree 50 yards back, and the sickness that took him was now claiming her too. The summer heat of 1874 pressed down like a weight, and she had not eaten in days, could not remember the last time she had managed to keep water down. Her hands trembled as she tried one more time to lift the spare wheel, but her legs buckled, and she collapsed against the wagon's side, sliding down into the dirt. She closed her eyes against the blazing sun and thought about Ohio, about the little house with blue shutters where she had grown up, about her mother's garden full of roses. She thought about how foolish they had been, she and Thomas, thinking they could make their fortune in the goldfields near Yuba City. The fever had taken him so quickly, just 2 days of burning up and then he was gone, and now she was following him into the dark. The sound of hoofbeats brought her back from the edge of unconsciousness. She tried to lift her head but could not manage it. The horse came closer, stopped. Boots hit the ground. "Good God," a man's voice said, rough with shock. Sarah forced her eyes open. A tall figure blocked out the sun, and she could not make out his face against the glare. She tried to speak but only managed a weak croak. "Hold on now," the man said, and then he was kneeling beside her and she could see him properly. He was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of slate under a wide-brimmed hat. His face was tanned and weathered, with a strong jaw shadowed by several days of stubble. "When did you last eat?" Sarah tried to answer, but her vision was graying at the edges. She felt his hand on her forehead and heard him curse softly. "Burning up," he muttered. Then louder, "Can you hear me? I am going to help you, but I need you to stay awake if you can." She wanted to tell him about Thomas, about the fever, about how it was too late, but darkness was pulling at her. She felt herself being lifted, felt the surprising strength in his arms as he carried her to the shade. Then there was nothing. When she woke, the sun had moved in the sky. Evening was coming on, and the brutal heat had lessened slightly. She was lying on a bedroll in the shade of her wagon, and there was a damp cloth on her forehead. The stranger was crouched over a small fire, and the smell of something cooking made her stomach clench with sudden, desperate hunger. "You are awake," he said, noticing her movement. He came over quickly, bringing a canteen. "Slow sips now. Your body needs water more than anything." The water was warm, but it was the most glorious thing she had ever tasted. He let her have only a little, then took it away despite her protest. "Too much and you will just bring it back up," he said firmly. "We will go slow. Can you tell me your name, Sarah?" she whispered. Her voice was a rasp. "Sarah Donnelly." "Zachary Zimmerman," he said. "My friends call me Zach. I am a ranch hand, was heading back to the Copper Creek Ranch north of Yuba City when I saw your wagon. How long have you been out here?" "Days," she said. The effort of speaking exhausted her. "My husband, he died. The fever." Zachary's expression grew grave. "I saw the grave. I am sorry." "Did you get sick at the same time?" She nodded weakly. "Started the day after he passed. Could not finish burying him properly. I tried." "You did fine," he said quietly. "Better than many could have managed. Are you hungry? I have some broth. It is not much, but it will help." She was hungry, so hungry she could weep. He helped her sit up carefully, propping her against a saddle, then brought her a tin cup filled with thin broth. Her hands shook too badly to hold it, so he held it for her, patient as she took tiny sips. It was just salt pork and water and some wild onions, but it tasted like heaven. "Not too fast," he cautioned. "Give your stomach time to remember what food is." "Why are you helping me?" she asked between sips. "You could have ridden past." His gray eyes met hers, and there was something fierce in them. No decent man rides past someone in need. My mama would come back from the grave to tan my hide if I did such a thing, and she has been gone these 10 years. Despite everything, Sarah felt a smile tug at her lips. She raised you right. She tried, he said. My pa died when I was 12, and she raised me and my 3 sisters on her own until the cholera took her. I know what it is to be alone and scared. I would not wish that on anyone. He let her finish the broth, then insisted she rest again. I am going to stay the night, he said. Make sure the fever breaks properly. In the morning, if you are stronger, I will take you into Yuba City. It is only about 15 miles from here. There is a doctor there and a decent hotel where you can recover properly. I cannot pay you, Sarah said, shame heating her cheeks. We spent nearly everything we had getting here, and then the fever, the medicine, it costs so much. I am not asking for payment, Zachary said firmly. I am asking you to rest and let me help. Can you do that? She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could manage on her own, but the truth was she could barely keep her eyes open. Thank you, she whispered. Sleep, he said gently. I will be right here. She slept and dreamed of her mother's roses, and when she woke in the night, fevered and afraid, Zachary was there with cool water and steady hands. He bathed her face and wrists, talking to her in a low, calm voice about nothing important, just stories about horses he had known and cattle drives, and a particularly stubborn hen his mother had owned that would only lay eggs in his father's hat. By morning, her fever had broken. She woke to find herself soaked with sweat but clear-headed for the first time in days. Zachary was already up, had coffee brewing, and was frying salt pork in a small pan. When he saw she was awake, his whole face lit up with relief. Your fever broke, he said. How do you feel? Weak as a kitten, Sarah admitted, but better, clearer. He brought her coffee and more food, insisting she eat slowly. While she ate, he went to inspect her wagon. The wheel is broken beyond repair, he called back, but I can salvage most of your supplies. Do you have family waiting for you anywhere? Anyone I should send word to? Sarah shook her head, fighting back tears. No, Thomas was all I had. His parents passed before we married, and mine are gone too. We were going to start fresh in California, find land, build something. It was supposed to be our new beginning. Zachary was quiet for a moment, then came back to sit across from her. I am sorry you lost him. That is a hard thing to bear. We had only been married 2 years, Sarah said softly. Met at a church social in Columbus, Ohio. He was so full of dreams and plans. He made me believe we could do anything. She wiped her eyes. Now I do not know what to do. I have no home to go back to, no money to get there even if I did. First thing is to get you well, Zachary said practically. Then we can figure out the rest. Yuba City has opportunities for folks willing to work. There is a boarding house run by Mrs. Chen, a widow from China. She is always looking for help, and she treats people fair. You could stay there while you get your strength back, maybe find work. I can cook and sew, Sarah offered. I helped my mother run a boarding house when I was younger. I know how to keep accounts too. Then you will do just fine, Zachary said with a confidence she wished she felt. Come on, let me help you stand. We need to see if you can manage sitting a horse. It will be slow going, but I want you seeing that doctor today. Getting her onto his horse was an ordeal. She was so weak she could barely stand, and the world spun dizzyingly when she tried. But Zachary was patient and strong, and eventually she was seated sideways in front of the saddle. He swung up behind her, one arm wrapped securely around her waist to keep her steady. I have got you, he said. Just lean back against me if you need to. We will go slow. The ride was exhausting, even though Zachary kept his horse to a gentle walk. Sarah had to concentrate on simply staying conscious. on breathing through the waves of dizziness and weakness. But she was aware of the solid strength of Zachary's chest behind her, the careful way he guided the horse to avoid rough patches, the patient steadiness of him. They stopped twice to rest, and each time he made her drink water and eat a little of the dried beef he carried in his saddlebags. He did not press her to talk, seemed content to let her gather her strength. When she apologized for being such a burden, he just shook his head. "You survived out there for days on your own while sick and grieving," he said. "That takes more courage than most folks ever have to find. You are no burden, Sarah Donnelly. You are a fighter." His words settled something in her chest, some tight knot of shame and fear loosening just a little. They reached Yuba City as the sun was reaching its zenith. It was a bustling town, bigger than Sarah had expected, with wooden buildings lining wide dirt streets. She could see Chinese merchants and white settlers, miners in dusty clothes and women in calico dresses. The town had sprung up during the gold rush and had the raw, energetic feel of a place still finding itself. Zachary took her straight to the doctor, a tired-looking man named Henderson who had an office above the general store. He examined Sarah thoroughly, asked detailed questions about the fever, then gave his assessment. "Likely the same as got your husband, some kind of ague," he said. "You are through the worst of it now, but you need rest and good food. No exertion for at least 2 weeks. Those fevers can come back if you are not careful." He gave Zachary a bottle of tonic and detailed instructions, then refused payment. "You look like you have had trouble enough," he said to Sarah kindly. "Pay me when you are back on your feet." From there, Zachary took her to the boarding house he had mentioned. It was a tidy 2-story building painted white with green shutters, and the woman who answered the door was tiny, Chinese, probably 50, with sharp eyes that softened when Zachary explained the situation. "Mr. Zimmerman brings me strays like he brings the ranch strays," Mrs. Chen said, but her tone was warm. "Come in, child. You look half dead. I have a room on the ground floor, quiet and cool. You can stay there while you recover." "I cannot pay right away," Sarah said, hating having to admit it. "But I can work, I promise, as soon as I am well enough." "We will work something out," Mrs. Chen said, waving away her protests. "Mr. Zimmerman vouches for you, and that is enough for me. Come, let me get you settled." The room was small but immaculately clean, with a real bed covered in a patchwork quilt and a window looking out onto a garden. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She had not slept in a real bed since Thomas died. "Rest now," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "I will bring you soup later." Zachary lingered in the doorway, his hat in his hands. "I need to get back to the ranch," he said, "but I will come back in a few days to check on you. Mrs. Chen will take good care of you." "Zachary," Sarah said, and found she did not have words for what she wanted to say. "Thank you. You saved my life." His ears went red and he ducked his head. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Sarah said. "They would not have. But you did. I will not forget it." He nodded, settled his hat back on his head, and left. Sarah heard him speaking quietly with Mrs. Chen in the hallway, and then the sound of the front door closing. She lay back on the soft bed and closed her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, she felt safe. The next days passed in a blur of sleep and soup. Mrs. Chen was a brisk, efficient nurse, bringing food at regular intervals and forcing Sarah to eat even when she protested she was not hungry. There were other boarders in the house, Sarah learned. A young couple who were teachers at the new school, an older man who worked at the assay office, and 2 miners who were brothers. All of them were kind to her, bringing her books to read and asking after her health. By the 3rd day, Sarah was strong enough to sit in a chair by the window and help Mrs. Chen with mending. By the 5th day, she could walk to the kitchen and back without getting dizzy. By the 7th day, she was restless, eager to be useful. "I can help with the cooking," she told Mrs. Chen. "Or the cleaning. Please, I need to earn my keep." Mrs. Chen studied her with those sharp eyes. "You are still too thin, too weak, but I can see you will give me no peace until I put you to work. Fine, you can help with breakfast tomorrow. But if you get tired, you sit down, no arguments." It felt good to be useful again. Sarah found comfort in the familiar rhythms of cooking, in the smell of bread baking and coffee brewing. Mrs. Chen ran a tight household but a warm one, and Sarah began to feel like maybe, just maybe, she could build a life here. Zachary came back on the 8th day. Sarah was in the kitchen kneading dough when she heard his voice in the front hallway, and her heart did an unexpected little skip. She wiped her flour-covered hands on her apron and hurried to the door. He was standing in the parlor talking to Mrs. Chen, his hat in his hands. He had cleaned up since she last saw him, his dark hair neatly trimmed, his jaw freshly shaved. When he saw her, his whole face brightened. "Sarah," he said, "you look so much better. You have color in your cheeks again." "Thanks to you," she said, "and to Mrs. Chen. I cannot thank you enough for bringing me here." "I am glad you are recovering," he said. There was something in his eyes she could not quite read. "I brought your things from the wagon, what I could salvage anyway. They are out front in a trunk." "You went back?" Sarah asked, surprised. "That is a full day's ride. Figured you would want your possessions," he said with a shrug. "Your clothes and such. And there were some books and a framed photograph I thought might be important to you." The photograph would be her wedding portrait, she knew, the only image she had of Thomas. Tears stung her eyes. "Thank you, that means more than you know." Mrs. Chen, with her uncanny instinct for these things, announced she needed to check on something in the kitchen and left them alone. Zachary shifted his weight, suddenly awkward. "Would you like to sit?" Sarah asked, gesturing to the parlor. "Or I could make coffee. Coffee would be nice," he said. "If you are up to it." She was, and she welcomed the excuse to do something with her hands. In the kitchen, she prepared the coffee with care, aware that Mrs. Chen was pretending to be busy with dinner preparations while almost certainly listening. When Sarah brought the tray back to the parlor, Zachary was standing by the window, looking out at the street. "It is a nice town," he said as she poured. "Growing fast, more folks coming every month." "Have you been here long?" Sarah asked. "About 3 years," he said. "Came out from Missouri after my last sister got married. Figured she did not need me hovering over her anymore. Got hired on at Copper Creek Ranch and have been there since. Good work, good people." They talked for an hour, easy conversation that ranged over everything and nothing. He told her about the ranch, about the work of driving cattle and breaking horses. She told him about Ohio, about her childhood, about the boarding house her mother ran. She found herself telling him things she had not thought about in years, and he listened with a focus that made her feel truly heard. When he finally rose to leave, she felt disappointed. "Will you come back?" she asked, then felt her cheeks heat at how forward that sounded. "I mean, I would like to repay you properly once I have some money saved. You do not owe me anything," he said gently. "But yes, I will come back if you would like me to." "I would," Sarah said, meeting his eyes. "Very much." His slow smile transformed his face. "Then I will. Maybe in a few days, if I can get away." He came back 3 days later, and then 4 days after that. Each visit, they talked more easily, the conversation flowing like they had known each other for years instead of weeks. Sarah learned that he had taught himself to read from his mother's Bible, that he had a gift with horses, that he sent half his wages to his youngest sister, whose husband had been injured in a logging accident. He learned that she loved poetry, that she could play the piano though she had not touched one in months, that she was afraid she would never stop missing Thomas, but was grateful to still be alive. Grief is a strange thing, Zachary said thoughtfully one afternoon as they walked along the river that ran through Yuba City. Sarah was strong enough now for short walks, and Mrs. Chen had shooed them out of the house, insisting Sarah needed fresh air. It does not go away, but it changes. Gets softer around the edges, maybe. You sound like you know from experience, Sarah said. I lost my ma when I was 18, he said. Then a girl I was courting when I was 22, she died of consumption. For a long time, I thought I would feel that sharp edge of loss forever. But it did soften eventually. I can remember them now with joy instead of just pain. I am sorry, Sarah said softly. That is too much loss for anyone. Life is hard sometimes, he agreed, but it is beautiful too. You just have to keep your eyes open for the beautiful parts. She looked at him, at the way the afternoon sun caught in his dark hair, at the genuine kindness in his slate-gray eyes, and thought that maybe he was one of the beautiful parts. The turning point came in September. Sarah had been in Yuba City for 6 weeks, was fully recovered, and was working full-time for Mrs. Chen in exchange for her room and board plus a small wage. She had also started taking in sewing on the side, and was building a modest savings. The work was hard but satisfying, and she was beginning to feel like herself again. Zachary had become a regular presence in her life, visiting every week when he came to town for supplies. They had fallen into a comfortable friendship, though Sarah was becoming increasingly aware that her feelings were deepening into something more. She caught herself watching for him on the days he was due to visit, found herself thinking about him at odd moments while she worked. The realization terrified her. It had only been a few months since Thomas died. Was it wrong to feel this way so soon? She was wrestling with these thoughts one evening when Zachary arrived unexpectedly on a Tuesday instead of his usual Saturday. She was sitting on the front porch with Mrs. Chen, mending tablecloths by lamplight when she heard the hoofbeats. That is Mr. Zimmerman's horse, Mrs. Chen said with a knowing look. I will go inside and give you 2 privacy. Mrs. Chen, we are just friends, Sarah protested, but the older woman was already disappearing through the door. Zachary dismounted and tied his horse, then came up the porch steps. In the lamplight, she could see tension in his shoulders. Is everything all right? She asked, setting aside her mending. I need to talk to you, he said, then stopped, ran a hand through his hair. Can we walk? They walked down toward the river in the gathering darkness. The September evening was warm and crickets sang in the grass. Zachary was silent for a long time, and Sarah's heart pounded with anxiety. Finally, by the water's edge, he stopped and turned to face her. Sarah, I need to tell you something, and I need you to be honest with me about how you feel. All right, she said cautiously. He took a deep breath. These past weeks, getting to know you, it has meant more to me than I can properly say. You are smart and brave and kind, and when I am with you, I feel like I am exactly where I am supposed to be. I know it has not been long since your husband passed, and I know I have no right to ask this. But I need you to know that I have feelings for you, deep feelings, and if there is any chance that you might someday feel the same way, then I will wait. I will wait as long as you need. Sarah's heart was thundering in her chest. Zachary, you do not have to answer now, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. Because I cannot keep pretending I do not feel this way, cannot keep coming to town and acting like you are just a friend when you are so much more than that to me. Stop, Sarah said and stepped closer to him. Just stop talking for a moment and let me speak. He fell silent, watching her with those gray eyes that had become so dear to her. I have been feeling guilty, she confessed, because I think about you all the time, because I look forward to your visits more than anything else in my week. Because when you smile at me, I feel warm all the way through. Thomas has only been gone a few months, and I keep thinking I should still be drowning in grief. But the truth is, you have given me a reason to keep living. You have shown me that there can be joy after loss, hope after despair. And yes, I have feelings for you too, strong feelings. But I am scared, Zachary. Scared of moving too fast, scared of dishonoring Thomas's memory, scared of getting my heart broken again. Then we go slow, Zachary said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. As slow as you need. I am not going anywhere, Sarah. I am in this for the long road if you will have me. You are a good man, Zachary Zimmerman, she said softly. The best man I have ever known. I am just a cowboy, he said, but he was smiling. Just a ranch hand with dirt under his fingernails and horse manure on his boots. You are so much more than that, Sarah said. And I am a widow with nothing to my name but a trunk of salvaged belongings. If we are listing our shortcomings, mine are far worse. You are everything, Zachary said, and the fierce certainty in his voice made her breath catch. Everything I did not know I was looking for. She reached for his hand, and his fingers closed around hers, warm and calloused and steady. They stood by the river as darkness fell, holding hands and not saying anything, and it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. They courted properly after that, though it was a courtship that would have raised eyebrows back in Ohio. Zachary took her on long rides through the countryside, always careful to have her back before dark to preserve her reputation. They went to church socials and barn dances, and Sarah discovered that Zachary was a surprisingly good dancer. They had picnics by the river and attended the traveling theater company that came through town in October. Sarah introduced Zachary to poetry, reading Wordsworth and Keats aloud to him on lazy Sunday afternoons. He taught her to ride a horse properly, patient with her fear after the long ordeal with the broken wagon. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Sarah found herself telling him things she had never told anyone, and he shared his own vulnerabilities with a trust that humbled her. By November, the whole town knew they were courting, and Mrs. Chen took full credit for the match. I knew from the first day, she told anyone who would listen. When he brought her to me, I saw the way he looked at her. That man was already in love, he just did not know it yet. December brought cold rain to Yuba City, and with it came a letter that changed everything. Sarah was helping Mrs. Chen prepare dinner when the postmaster's son arrived with the mail. There was a letter for Sarah, postmarked from Columbus, Ohio. Her hands shook as she opened it. It was from Thomas's brother, whom she had met only once at the wedding. He wrote to express his condolences, having only recently received word of Thomas's death. But the real shock was the second part of the letter. Thomas's grandfather had died 3 months earlier, and in his will, he had left a substantial sum to be divided among his grandchildren. As Thomas's widow, Sarah was entitled to his share. $2,000. Sarah read the letter 3 times, unable to believe it. $2,000 was a fortune, enough to buy land, to start a business, to live comfortably for years. She walked through the rest of the day in a daze, the letter clutched in her pocket like a talisman. When Zachary arrived that evening for dinner, as he often did on Fridays, she pulled him aside and showed him the letter. "Sarah, that is wonderful," he said, genuine joy in his voice. "You will be secure now. You can do anything you want." "Yes," she said slowly, "I suppose I can." Something in her tone made him look at her more closely. "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking about what I want," she said carefully. "About what kind of life I want to build here. And I realize that none of it means anything if you are not in it." His breath caught. "Sarah, I am not the same woman I was when you found me by that broken wagon," she said. "That woman was lost and broken and ready to die. You gave me my life back, Zachary. You gave me a reason to keep going. And I have fallen in love with you, deeply, completely in love with you. So I am going to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Ask me, he said, his voice rough. Marry me, Sarah said. Not because you saved my life and not because I have money now. Marry me because we fit together, because we make each other better, because I cannot imagine a future that does not have you in it. For a moment, Zachary just stared at her. Then he started to laugh, a deep, joyful sound. Woman, I have been trying to work up the courage to propose to you for 3 weeks now. Bought a ring and everything, been carrying it around like a fool trying to find the perfect moment. You have a ring? Sarah asked, delight bubbling up in her chest. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple gold band with a small garnet stone. It was my mother's, he said. The only thing of hers I kept. I have been waiting for the right woman to give it to, and I knew it was you from the moment I found you in the desert. I just did not want to rush you. You are not rushing me, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face now. I am rushing you. So what is your answer, Zachary Zimmerman? Will you marry me? Yes, he said and pulled her into his arms. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and Sarah felt something settle into place in her soul. Some piece of herself she did not know was missing until it clicked home. They were married in January of 1875, in a simple ceremony at the church in Yuba City. Mrs. Chen cried through the entire service, and the other boarders attended along with several ranch hands from Copper Creek. Sarah wore a dress of blue silk that she had sewn herself, and Zachary wore his Sunday best with his boots polished until they shone. The wedding breakfast was held at Mrs. Chen's boarding house, and there was so much food and laughter that Sarah felt her heart might burst with happiness. This was so different from her first wedding, that quiet, anxious ceremony in Ohio with Thomas's few relatives looking on disapprovingly. This felt like coming home. With Sarah's inheritance and Zachary's savings, they bought 20 acres of good land along the river, a few miles outside Yuba City. The property had a small cabin that needed work, but it had a good well and fertile soil. They spent the first months of their marriage fixing up the cabin, working side by side to make it a home. Zachary was good with his hands, and Sarah had a knack for making even the simplest space feel warm and welcoming. They planted an orchard that spring, apple trees and peach trees and cherry trees. Sarah started a vegetable garden and Zachary built a barn for the horses they planned to raise. It was hard work, but they were building something together, and that made every blister and backache worthwhile. In the evenings, they would sit on their porch and watch the sun set over their land, and Sarah would think about how close she had come to dying in the desert, how she had been ready to give up, and then Zachary had appeared like something out of a dream. She had lost so much, but she had gained something precious too, a second chance at life, at love, at happiness. What are you thinking about? Zachary asked one evening, pulling her closer against his side. About how lucky I am, Sarah said. How blessed. I am the lucky one, he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. I was just riding along, doing my job, and I found you, the best thing that ever happened to me, lying in the dust beside a broken wagon. Your mother raised you to stop and help people in need, Sarah reminded him. So really, this is all her doing. I will have to thank her properly when I get to heaven someday, Zachary said with a smile. Tell her the stray I picked up that day turned out to be the love of my life. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, and Sarah felt a peace she had never known before. Yes, she had lost Thomas, and that grief would always be a part of her. But she had also found Zachary, and he had given her more than just her life. He had given her a future worth living. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and work and joy. The orchard began to bear fruit, and they sold their produce in Yuba City, building a reputation for quality. Zachary took on work training horses for nearby ranches, and his skill became well known throughout the region. Sarah kept chickens and sold eggs, and in the winters she took in sewing work. They were not rich, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. Their cabin was always full of laughter, and they became known for their hospitality. Mrs. Chen visited often, as did the friends they had made in town. On Sundays, they went to church, and then usually had people over for dinner. In the spring of 1876, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. She told Zachary one evening after dinner, and he whooped with joy and spun her around in his arms until she was dizzy and laughing. "We are going to be parents," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Sarah asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," he said, pulling her close. "I am terrified and thrilled and grateful all at once. This child is going to be so loved, Sarah, so incredibly loved." The pregnancy was not easy. Sarah was sick for the first few months, and Zachary hovered over her like a nervous mother hen until she finally had to order him to stop fussing. But by the summer, she was feeling better, and they spent the warm months preparing for their baby. Zachary built a cradle from oak wood, carving it with intricate designs of horses and flowers. Sarah sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her heart full of anticipation. Their son was born on a cold night in November, after a long labor that terrified Zachary more than it did Sarah. Mrs. Chen served as midwife, calm and competent, talking Sarah through the pain. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Zachary cried. "What should we name him?" Sarah asked, exhausted but elated, holding their son against her chest. "I was thinking about my father," Zachary said, touching the baby's tiny hand with one gentle finger. "His name was James, but I want you to choose the middle name." "James Thomas," Sarah said softly, "for your father and my first husband, the men who shaped us into who we are." "James Thomas Zimmerman," Zachary said, testing it out. "It is perfect. He is perfect." Being parents transformed them in ways both exhausting and wonderful. James was a colicky baby who did not sleep through the night for months, and there were times when Sarah and Zachary were so tired they could barely function. But there were also moments of profound joy. James's first smile, his first laugh, the way he reached for his father when Zachary came in from working in the orchard. "I never knew I could love anyone this much," Zachary confessed one night as he rocked James to sleep. "You and him, you are my whole world." "And you are ours," Sarah said, leaning against his shoulder and watching their son's peaceful face. "Our whole world and more." They had a daughter 2 years later, born in the spring with Sarah's dark hair and Zachary's gray eyes. They named her Rose, after Sarah's mother and the roses she had grown in Ohio. Rose was an easier baby than James had been, and she had a sunny disposition that made everyone who met her smile. Life settled into a new rhythm with 2 children. The days were full of noise and mess and endless work, but they were also full of love. James grew into a curious, energetic boy who followed his father everywhere, asking endless questions about horses and trees and stars. Rose toddled after her brother, adoring him completely, and Zachary built them a swing beneath the old oak tree in the yard. On quiet evenings, after the children were asleep, Sarah and Zachary would sit on their porch as they had done since the beginning, watching the stars and talking about everything and nothing. These were Sarah's favorite moments, just the 2 of them, the life they had built surrounding them like a warm blanket. "Do you ever think about how we met?" Zachary asked one evening in the summer of 1880. James was 5 now, Rose was 3, and Sarah was pregnant again, though they had not told the children yet. "All the time," Sarah admitted. "How close I came to dying, how you saved me." "You saved yourself," Zachary said firmly. "You survived until I got there. That was all you." "We saved each other," Sarah said. "You gave me a reason to live, and I gave you someone to love. That seems fair." "More than fair," Zachary agreed. "It is a blessing I never expected and do not deserve." "You deserve all the good things," Sarah said, taking his hand. "You are the best man I know, Zachary Zimmerman, the best husband, the best father. And you are the best thing that ever happened to me," he said. "Even if I did have to find you half dead in the desert to get you." They laughed together, and Sarah thought about how strange life was, how tragedy and joy could be so intertwined. She had lost her first husband, had nearly died herself, had been alone and terrified and ready to give up. But she had survived, and in surviving she had found this. A good man who loved her, beautiful children, a home and a life that felt like a gift. Their third child was born in January of 1881, another daughter they named Grace. She had Zachary's dark hair and Sarah's smile, and from the moment she arrived, she had both her parents wrapped around her tiny finger. James and Rose adored their baby sister, and the house was full of noise and chaos and laughter. The orchard was thriving now, their horses were sought after throughout the region, and they had built a life that was comfortable and secure. But more than any material success, they had built a family rooted in love and respect and partnership. On their 6th wedding anniversary, Zachary surprised Sarah with a gift. It was a piano, transported all the way from Sacramento at great expense and effort. Sarah cried when she saw it, remembering how she had told him months after they met that she missed playing. "I have been saving for 2 years," Zachary admitted as she ran her fingers over the keys. "I wanted to give you something that would bring you joy." "You bring me joy," Sarah said through her tears. "You and our children, you are all the joy I need." "I know," he said with that slow smile she loved. "But I wanted to give you this too, because you deserve to have all your dreams, Sarah. Every single one." She played that evening old hymns and folk songs, and Zachary sat with the children and listened. Rose climbed into his lap, and James leaned against his shoulder, and baby Grace dozed in his arms, and Sarah thought her heart might burst from the fullness of it all. The years continued to pass, marked by seasons and harvests and the steady growth of their children. James grew tall and serious, with his father's way with horses and his mother's love of books. Rose was bright and bold, always getting into mischief, keeping everyone on their toes. Grace was gentle and artistic, always drawing or singing. In 1885, they added on to the cabin, building 2 more bedrooms and a proper parlor. The work took months, but Zachary did most of it himself with help from friends and neighbors. By the time it was finished, they had a proper house, large and comfortable, with space for their growing family and for the guests who were always stopping by. Sarah's sewing business had grown over the years, and she now had several women in town who worked for her, creating dresses and shirts and quilts that were sold as far away as Sacramento. Zachary's horse training business had grown too, and he had taken on 2 apprentices. They were prosperous by the standards of the time, but they never forgot where they had started. Every year on the anniversary of the day, Zachary found her in the desert. They would ride out to where it had happened. The broken wagon was long gone, but the cottonwood tree where Sarah had buried Thomas still stood. They would spend a few minutes there, Sarah paying her respects to the man she had loved first, thanking him silently for the years they had shared. Then she and Zachary would ride home together, hand in hand, grateful for the life they had built from the ashes of that tragedy. "You think Thomas would approve?" Sarah asked once, as they rode away from the cottonwood tree. It was 1888 now, 14 years since that terrible summer. "I think he would be glad you survived," Zachary said. "Glad you found happiness again. From what you have told me about him, he loved you too much to want you to spend your life mourning." "I think so too," Sarah agreed. "And I think you would have liked each other if you had ever met." "I like to think so," Zachary said. "Any man who loved you could not be all bad." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, then Zachary said, "I am grateful to him, you know, because loving him taught you how to love, and that love found its way to me. We do not exist in isolation, Sarah. We are shaped by everyone we have known, everyone we have loved. Thomas is a part of who you are, and I love all of you, including that part." Sarah had to wipe her eyes. After all these years, Zachary could still find new ways to show her the depth of his love, the generosity of his heart. By 1890, James was 15 and already working alongside his father full-time. He had his father's patience and his mother's practical intelligence, and Zachary was teaching him everything he knew about training horses. Rose was 13 and learning the sewing business from her mother, though she also had a talent for figures and helped keep the books for both businesses. Grace was 9, still young enough to be more interested in playing than working, though she helped her mother in the garden and with the chickens. They were a family now, fully formed and thriving. Sarah looked at her children sometimes and marveled at how they had come from that terrible summer in 1874, from a dying woman by a broken wagon and a cowboy who stopped to help. So much life and love had grown from that single act of kindness. One evening in the fall of 1890, Sarah and Zachary were sitting on their porch as they had done for years, watching the sun set over their orchard. The children were inside doing their evening chores, and the house was full of the sounds of their voices and movement. "What are you thinking about?" Zachary asked, as he had asked 1,000 times before. "About how happy I am," Sarah said. "About how grateful I am for all of this, for you." "I am grateful too," Zachary said, pulling her close. "Every single day. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had ridden past that day?" Sarah asked. "If you had been in a hurry or if you had not seen the wagon." "I try not to think about it," Zachary admitted. "Because the idea of a world where I did not find you, where we did not have this life together, that is too terrible to contemplate." "But you did find me," Sarah said. "You stopped and you helped and you saved my life. And then you loved me and you gave me a life worth living. That is everything, Zachary. That is the whole world." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, the kiss of a man who had loved the same woman for 16 years and would love her for 16 more, for 60 more, for however long they were given. When they pulled apart, Sarah saw tears on his cheeks. "What is it?" she asked, concerned. "Just love," he said. "So much love I do not know what to do with it all." "Give it to me," Sarah said, "and to our children we will take all the love you have to give." "That is a lifetime's worth," Zachary warned with a smile. "Good," Sarah said. "Because that is exactly how long I plan to be here." They sat together as darkness fell, wrapped in each other's arms, listening to their children's voices drift out from the house. This was their life, built from tragedy and loss and a single act of kindness. It was not perfect, nothing in life was perfect, but it was theirs and it was precious, and it was more than enough. Years later, when they were old and their children were grown with families of their own, when James was running his own ranch and Rose had a successful dress shop in Sacramento, and Grace was teaching music at the school in Yuba City, Sarah and Zachary would still sit on their porch in the evenings and watch the sunset. Their hair had gone gray, their hands were gnarled with arthritis, but they still held hands like young lovers. "I would do it all again," Zachary said one evening. He was 70 now, Sarah was 68, and they had been married for almost 40 years. "Do what again?" Sarah asked. "All of it," he said. "Every hard day, every worry, every challenge. I would do it all again just to have this life with you." "Me too," Sarah said. "Even the hard parts, even almost dying in the desert, because it led me here to you, to this life we built together." "You were wasting away when I found you," Zachary said softly, remembering. "So small and sick and alone, I thought you might die before I could get you to town." "But I did not die," Sarah said, "because you brought me food and water, because you stayed to help. Because you saw someone in need and you did not ride past." "Best decision I ever made," Zachary said. "Best decision we both made," Sarah corrected. "I could have given up. I could have let the fever take me, but I fought to stay alive and you fought to save me, and together we built all of this." She gestured at the house, at the orchard heavy with fruit, at the barn where their grandchildren's voices could be heard as they played, at the life they had created from nothing but determination and love. "We did all right," Zachary said with satisfaction. "We did better than all right," Sarah said. "We did wonderfully." They sat in silence for a while, then Zachary said, "I love you, Sarah Zimmerman. I have loved you since the day I found you by that broken wagon, and I will love you until the day I die and beyond." "And I love you," Sarah said. "My cowboy, my savior, my partner, my love. You are everything good in my life, Zachary Zimmerman. Everything good." The sun set in shades of gold and rose, painting the sky like a promise. And Sarah and Zachary sat together on the porch they had built with their own hands, in front of the house they had filled with love, on the land they had worked together to make fruitful, and they knew they had been blessed beyond measure. They had taken tragedy and transformed it into joy, had taken loss and turned it into love. Their story had started with a dying woman and a kind stranger, but it had become something beautiful, something lasting, something worth every moment of struggle and sacrifice. And when, years later, they both passed peacefully in their sleep within days of each other, too connected to be separated even by death, their children and grandchildren gathered to celebrate lives well lived and a love that had endured through every trial. They told the story of how their parents had met, of the cowboy who stopped to help a dying woman, of the love that grew from that single act of kindness. And they taught their own children that love and compassion were the most powerful forces in the world, capable of transforming tragedy into joy, despair into hope, and strangers into family. The orchard that Zachary and Sarah had planted still stood, still bore fruit, a living monument to the life they had built together. And the little house by the river, expanded and improved over the years, but still fundamentally the same, remained in the family for generations, a testament to what two people could create when they chose to love and support each other through all of life's challenges. That was their legacy, not wealth or fame, but love. Pure, enduring, transformative love that had started with a simple choice to stop and help someone in need, and had grown into something that touched countless lives. And in the end, that was everything that mattered.